Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us with the Ericsson Cradlepoint for our webinar today on the topic of enhancing Australian rural connectivity. Today we have joining us Michael Zutenis, the Senior Director of APAC Distribution, and John Hopping, the CTO for APAC for Ericsson Enterprise Wireless Solutions. My name is Simon. I'm from Leader. I'm the Business Manager looking after infrastructure solutions, and I'll hand it over to the Ericsson team to go through the content. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Simon. So, good day, everyone. Mike Zutenis here from Ericsson, Ericsson Enterprise. So, I'll start off the presentation just giving a very brief background around Ericsson, and you may have actually heard of us as being Cradlepoint or under the Cradlepoint name. So, we just wanted to remove any confusion about what the two names mean and make it crystal clear. And then we'll dive into the actual material, and then we'll do a wrap up in the end. We're completely free to ask questions anytime through the chat window. We'll be happy to pause. We've got plenty of time, so don't feel shy. We're here just to give you as much good information as we can. All right, can we go to the first slide, please, and just let it build out? Okay, so Ericsson has been around in Australia probably at least 100 years. You know, if you look at building basically the backbone of the, you know, what was the telecom network, and then now currently in the Telstra mobile network. So Cradlepoint, which is where John and I first started out in this business, Cradlepoint was an enterprise-focused company building essentially LTE or 4G and 5G routers, but very reliable routers, both ruggedized and non-ruggedized. And we'll talk a bit about those. We've got, you can see there, over 2 million devices out in the marketplace right now, 36,000 customers. But we are largely selling to enterprises, so customers, end users, governments, that sort of thing. Ericsson globally was carrier focused. They focus on selling to the operators, the network operators. 4 years ago, Ericsson acquired Cradlepoint, and so, but we continued to use the Cradlepoint name. So you may have seen us at the Leader Expos under the Cradlepoint brand. As of September, the name Cradlepoint is being retired as a company name. So we're going to be here from here on in Ericsson. But when you hear us talking, if you've dealt with us in Cradlepoint, then you'll know who we are. Hence, that's why we're all wearing Ericsson shirts now. So hopefully that sets the scene as to who you're talking to, and you know who, and that's all clear. So I'll hand you over to John, our CTO, and he'll take you through the main part of the session.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and yeah, welcome everybody. Nice to be here. So what we're going to talk about today is specifically around connectivity in the rural areas of Australia, which are, you know, some of the challenging areas around the world in terms of connectivity. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about how we can help with that problem, and some of the strategies that you can employ to basically deal with the lack of connectivity, for want of a better word, in those regional areas. So before we get into that content, I just want to kick off by just giving a quick high-level overview of our product set. So as Mike said, we're now Ericsson Enterprise Wireless Solutions. Cradlepoint is the brand name, and we focus on three main areas in terms of our wireless WAN business, which is primarily what the Leader team is focused on. That is the branch connectivity, which is fixed locations typically, vehicle connectivity or mobile, which is essentially putting a router into a mobile vehicle that's moving around. And then the third area is IoT. We have also under our portfolio the private cellular networking connectivity options, which come from Ericsson. These are typically the private cellular networks that are used in locations such as airports, ports, big manufacturing plants. It's typically used for manufacturing in terms of having a private network instead of Wi-Fi. So maybe if you think of a port that has a lot of metal and things, it's not easy outside areas to cover with Wi-Fi. So you'd use that private cellular capability there, which basically means you're standing up a small version of the macro Telstra or Optus network on your own location. We also have a security portfolio, and that's now being merged into our SD-WAN SASE offerings, and that includes the technology that's the secure service edge technology, so you could protect your users against malicious threats, day one attacks and things like that with technologies such as our Ericom web browser isolations, where we can air gap the user from the vulnerabilities, as well as we can also use technologies such as secure web gateway and things like that to protect users against those threats, and wrapping that all together into a SASE portfolio with our SD-WAN. You can employ that technology to use that to protect your users, not just from the web browser threats, but from the entire network. So I'll talk a bit more about that further on into the presentation. And then finally, just to call out a few of the headlines here. So we're the worldwide leader for wireless WAN for business, for enterprise. Here in Australia, we launched with Telstra first, and this was for the first 5G enterprise solution in the world, and that was back in the pandemic, back in 2020, and we've got lots of active connections and 2.5 million plus routers adapters under subscription. So yeah, a lot of we're a worldwide company, and as you know, we're Ericsson, which is a really well-known brand, especially in the cellular space. So let's get into the discussion around the Australian rural connectivity and some of the
Sorry,
challenges.
just before you
Sorry.
do, can you hide that little pop-up thing there that app go to is sharing? Just go hide that.
Okay. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't know that was showing. Okay, good. Yep, I've done that. So let's get into the Australian rural connectivity challenge. First of all, Australia is obviously a very diverse country. It's got lots of different terrains and connectivity mixes. If you look at the picture there, there's combinations of farming, lots of highways that start off at the coast with lots of greenery, and to where they end up in the middle there with the deserts and everything in between. So obviously, as you go further out of the major cities, the connectivity is less because there's less population. So Telstra, Optus, Vodafone, TPG, etc., have less infrastructure out there, and maybe only cover the towns and cities that are out there, and perhaps the highways. So once you go off of those locations into really remote areas, there's really not much connectivity from a cellular or fixed perspective. So that's the backdrop of what we want to talk about here. In terms of just a bit of the news and the information that's in the press around this, there's lots of discussions in the press around the digital divide. Lots of people saying that there's not enough connectivity out in some of these remote areas. The areas are difficult to get high speed internet, 5G, especially. Also coming up is the closure of the Telstra and Optus 3G network, which is tends to be out in a lot of the regional areas. There's a lot of adverts on the TV at the moment talking about that, and make sure that people are aware that this is happening, because there will be people impacted by you know, sometimes life-saving equipment going offline and things if they don't know that it's happening. And obviously already we've shut down the 3G service with Vodafone earlier this year. So the problem is there in these regional areas, but we have solutions which I'll get onto now, which can help you address these, and let's get into them. So first of all, reliable connectivity. So what do we mean by this? This is the means of keeping a connection up and having, you know, generally some sort of resiliency. So we can't always rely on just one carrier. If you were around a few months ago when the Optus network failed, I mean, if you didn't have a second carrier, you were down for most of the day, and that was a major outage. Now, that fortunately isn't an event that happens very often, but it did highlight the dependence on just one carrier, and what we can show you with the up and coming slides is that there is ways to deal with this, not just with another carrier, but perhaps other technology as well, such as satellite. So the main thing here is that we are highlighting that if you don't have a second connection and the primary one goes down, or it's in a vehicle and you're moving out of coverage of one carrier and there isn't coverage as you go forward, you probably need to, and that connectivity is of importance. You need to consider how you're going to address that. So having a second carrier is probably the first but easiest way to address that. That can include needing to have a second modem, but I'll go through that in more detail, what that looks like in the next slide. So first of all, let's talk about if we have a single router which has a single modem built into it. Generally, all of our products, with the exception of one, has a single modem with at least 2 SIM slots. So when you have 2 SIM slots, those SIM slots are active and standby. And therefore you can have, say, SIM 1 with, say, a Telstra SIM, and SIM 2 with a say an Optus SIM, but it's a single modem. So both of those SIM cards cannot be active in any one time. You can only have, say, SIM 1 active or SIM 2 active at one time. And then what we need to do is then look at the monitor those connections, and if one fails, then it will then bring up the second SIM slot. Now, there is a delay in that happening. It's not automatic, so there is a bit of a disruption as it brings up the second SIM slot, but it's less than a minute and it will fail over. And then there's quite a lot of, in our connection manager, there's a lot of features that allow you to actually have control over what happens when the carrier A comes back online. In this scenario, you can either remain on carrier 2 indefinitely, or you can set some sort of priority on how you want that to fail back gracefully and not disrupt your connectivity. But the limitation of this is that you cannot have both carriers up at the same time with a single modem. So if you have this scenario, which is the default setting, you can add a second modem to most of our products, which will then give you what I will talk about next. Before I do that, Mike, is there any questions?
Okay. I haven't. There is one actually. Smart disconnect. Will that keep a SIP call of video stream live during failover?
So what Smart Disconnect does is in a single modem, no, it won't, because we're going to fail back, and when we have a failback event, it's going to change carriers. So you cannot have both connections up. What it's going to attempt to do is look at the connections, and it's the timing of when you fail back that controls. So in the case of a SIP call, which is real-time traffic, there will be some disruption with a single modem and a fail back event, but you can control it with smart disconnect, and when that you can control when that actually happens. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thanks, John. And one thing we don't want to add is whilst single modem it's the entry, I guess, the simplest and default solution, it's also the lowest cost. So obviously, if you're adding external modems and additional modems, then that adds cost to the device. So if you're very, very concerned about cost, then single modem. If you're more concerned about reliability, dual modem. And I think John will talk about that next. And the person who asked that smart disconnect question, if you still need further clarification, just put it into the chat window. All right, go ahead,
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, and actually, one thing to add here, you can get with some carriers, you can get a roaming SIM which has multiple carriers on the same SIM. So you can deal with that problem of needing to switch carriers with a single SIM. You're not bringing up the second SIM slot, but there still will be, you are switching carriers, so there's going to be some disruption, but maybe slightly less than a complete failover from carrier A to carrier B. So
What about? Oh, sorry, John. I was just going to add, if you're in a fixed location, what about failover from fixed to mobile? I'm not sure whether that
it's
was whether that was the context of that question. That's
if
all.
you've got a fixed link and you're failing over to mobile, you can then have them both active, which will then allow you to have less of an interruption, but you are still switching from one link to another. So in that scenario where you had the SIP traffic, which is real-time traffic, that would still be flowing across one link. If the link failed, it would have to rebuild that flow over the second link, even if both links were up and active, and that's going to still probably disrupt that call. So there is strategies which we'll come onto that can help with that, but you will still have an interruption even with two active links. If that's something you can't tolerate, I do have a solution that I will talk to in the coming slides. So let's continue. So in terms of the control of the modem, so with the when you have two SIMs in the modem, but a single modem, what we can do is run this feature within our carrier cellular intelligence capability, which was previously an SDK, and we've now put into the main NCM dashboard. This allows you to put a SIM in to both SIM slot 1 and SIM slot 2, have two carriers, say Telstra and Optus in an Australian context, and then what you can do is run the application. And what this will do is it will disable, say, SIM slot 2 and run a series of tests on carrier 1. And this is looking at things like latency, jitter. It runs a speed test, and then it will sort of store that information in a file, and then it will repeat the same tests on carrier 2. It will bring that carrier up, and then it will do the same tests that it's run on carrier 1, and then it will make a comparison. It will actually compare the results, and it will then decide, based on the criteria that you've configured, how you want to prioritize that, which is your primary carrier and which is your backup carrier, and it will reorder them in Connection Manager. So if Telstra had the better connectivity in the location you're in, then this will make Telstra the primary carrier and make Optus the backup. But obviously it can differ depending on where you are. Now, this is clearly a solution that's really aimed at fixed locations. Probably doesn't make sense running this in a vehicle because the conditions are constantly changing and fluctuating, so you wouldn't really be able to take advantage of this in a mobile sense. But it certainly in a fixed location, this does make a lot of sense, and it's part of our cellular intelligence and something you can take a look at. So just wanted to make you aware of that. The next solution is to use a dual SIM with a second modem. So what this is doing is reducing the time of failover. So we're bringing in terms of the router that you can see there. There is, you can't see it very well in the picture here, but above where I have modem 2, that there is a slot that you can plug in a second modem. This will then allow you to then have both modems active at the same time, and therefore SIM1 and SIM2 from carrier A and B are both running simultaneously. Now, that still doesn't fix necessarily all the problems that you may face with uninterruptions interruptions when say carrier A fails, because if you have a SIP call running over carrier A, you're going to still have an interruption if that goes down and as it rebuilds across carrier B. But the depending on the application, it does tend to be fairly seamless, this, but voice calls are probably one of the types of traffic that would still get potentially impacted with a failure. But this allows you also to be selective with SD-WAN policies to say, I want to route my traffic over carrier B in preference to certain traffic running over carrier A. Again, smart disconnect can be configured to decide when to move traffic from one carrier to the other, and all of these settings are in Connection Manager, which is really the WAN interface which controls all our modems and the how we operate them and the policies that are applied. So this is what we call dual SIM with dual modem. Any questions, Mike, at this stage, or further questions?
No. Yeah, keep going.
Okay, good. So how do we actually introduce a second modem? So very simply, if we have an older 4G router, we can make it 5G enabled by adding in this product here, which is called an MC400 4G or 5G. There's a category 18 4G version of it, and the one we're looking at here is the 5G version, which is also backwards compatible with 4G. But if I wanted to make a 4G router like that IBR 1700, a 5G router, we could add in that modular modem. It plugs into the expansion slot, and then that will make it 5G available, and we call that 5G ready. And then we have the routers, which are the other three that we have along the right hand side of that one, which is the E300, the E3000, and then our IoT and mobile products, which can all take either that modem into the expansion slot, or with the 920 and the 1900, we need to have what we call an RX dock added to it. So that's in that diagram of the IBR 1900. You can see there is underneath that a second dock, which is where this modem would plug in. It also gives you additional ports as well, so you could have other WAN links in there and have, instead of 4 ports in an R1900, you can have 8 ports, so you can put more WAN connectivity in as well. So that's how we upgrade our products from a single modem to either a 4G or 5G second modem. So in terms of WAN selection and failover, I just wanted to highlight another feature within the product, which we call SWANs, or Smart WAN Selection. So what this does is a calculation that's or algorithm that's run and calculates things like signal strength, latency, jitter, as well as it can look at data usage. And you can use one or multiple of these metrics to decide which is your current WAN link. So it's running constantly, looking at in this case, we've got 3 active connections, a wired and two cellular. If those conditions change, if we set a threshold on signal strength and it drops below the threshold, it will then look at the next link and make an evaluation. Now, obviously, signal strength on a wired link doesn't make sense, but it does on the carriers. So it would always stay at 100% on wired. So you'd probably, in this scenario, with a mixture of fixed and cellular, you'd be looking more to use latency and jitter to make the evaluation. But what it's doing is it's constantly making assessments as to what's the conditions of the links, and if they fall below a threshold, it will change the link dynamically to pick, say, if it's on the wired, it would go, and it degrades, it would go to the next best one, which maybe is the second one, carrier A. So this is built into Connection Manager. It's called Smart WAN Selection, and it's very easy for you to take advantage of this. There is also, and it's not on the slide here, just another way of dealing with this is we can do load balancing as well. So we have a feature called connection sets, which allows you to bind these 3 links together, and then you've got 4 algorithms that you can use to load share across all 3 of these links. So you can distribute the traffic. The main algorithm is round robin, so I'll send one flow this way down wired 1, I'll send another flow down to the second carrier A connection, and then the third flow down the third connection, and then you're getting the benefit of having 3 active links in this scenario. But if one fails, there is still going to be a little bit of disruption. So how do we deal with that? So let me introduce intelligent bonding. So intelligent bonding allows us to deal with the problems I was alluding to, where we have a flow running across, say, a voice flow running over one link, and then that fails. Whether it's going to fail over to the second link, which is active due to it being already online. I have a second modem, for example, it's still going to probably drop that voice call because it's got to fail over. So this is where we can now introduce our NCX and SD-WAN functionality and our bonding. This has been a really popular topic recently, and what this does is it's basically taking more than 2 connections, can be 4 in this scenario, WAN sources, and bonding them together into a single virtual connection, which increases resiliency, efficiency, and available bandwidth. So there's 3 ways to configure this. The first one, flow duplication. If you're at any of the leader events to date this year, you will have seen Mike and myself at the events demonstrating this capability. It's where we have 2 links, and one fixed in the scenario we were demoing at the event, and one cellular. We build our SD-WAN tunnels over both those links, and then if we lose one of those links, we are duplicating the traffic down the second link already. Whatever packet gets to the NCX service gateway, which is in the right hand side of this diagram, first we use, and if both links are active, you don't see any drop in the performance or traffic. But what happens in the event that, say, the traffic's a voice flows running on the satellite connection and that fails, we've already sent the voice packet down, say, carrier A, so we shouldn't have any interruption. And that's how we can get around that problem where the question was asked around SIP and that type of voice traffic. If it's really mission critical and we can't afford for any dropouts, this is the way to deal with that. But there is a trade-off, and that trade-off is that you do have to use double the bandwidth, so you are sending redundant information in that sense. The second algorithm is what we call flow balancing, and this is where we can load share across an SD-WAN infrastructure, and we can send, say, if we had a 10 meg link and a 5 meg link, the way you'd probably configure this is you would configure percentages of the of the traffic, and you would send twice as much traffic over the higher speed link as you would over the second link. But in the event of a failure of one of those links, you are going to have to rebuild that traffic over the other link, which may not have the capacity to take all of that traffic, depending on what you're sending. So that's how you can get load sharing on an SD-WAN environment. And then the third option there is what we're calling bandwidth aggregation. So this is where we can aggregate 2 or more WAN links into a logical link. We actually, in this case, bond them together into a single virtual link. And then if I have 2 5 meg links, I get a 10 meg pipe minus some overhead. And this use case is probably used more for like video streaming and things like that. If I'm trying to send live video content from a camera and I need on the uplink to combine 2 WAN sources together, this is how this can be achieved. So this is this is WAN bonding, and in terms of how we this is part of our SD-WAN functionality called NCX. So if you want to know more on that, we can go to and have a conversation with you directly. So Mike, any questions here? It's a good point for me to stop for a second.
No further questions so far.
Okay, so let's switch gears and start talking about mobile. So most of the things I've talked about today apply to fixed locations because we're actually not having fluctuating bandwidth. So, but when you're moving into a vehicle or a environment where the network is changing constantly, like in a vehicle, we need to look at some other ways to deal with this this connectivity challenge. So let's look at some of the characteristics here. So going forward, we're starting to see a lot of vehicles have a mobile office essentially in a vehicle. So we put one of our ruggedized routers in the vehicle. It creates a Wi-Fi bubble around the vehicle. A police car is a really good example of that, where that's got cameras, it's got push to talk applications, it's got AVL integrations, it's got GPS tracking, it's got all sorts of critical communications that are going on there, communication back with the base and command to deal with incidents and things. So these vehicles need to go everywhere within the rural areas, and we're essentially a mobile office now. But that does bring with it challenges because unlike the fixed locations we've been talking about mostly in the previous slides, obviously with a moving vehicle, you're going to experience changes every mile that you go down the road. You're going to find that that maybe coverage is diminishing from one carrier, and then maybe another carrier is having better coverage. And then as you go further and further out into the remote or desert areas of the country, there is virtually no mobile coverage, and then that means you have to rely on satellite. So this is a really real situation we're seeing, and there's lots of use cases in regional areas that are driving the need for this connectivity. So emergency services obviously is one really high profile use case. Another might be trucks and vehicles taking supplies and things like that around the country. You've got the mining and other activities like that happening in these remote areas, as well as you've got vehicles and people operating farming and other sort of rural activities like that that need connectivity now and rely on it more and more. So this is different, and how do we deal with that? So let's talk about satellite. So this is actually one of our customers pictures of one of our customers in South Australia, which go into a lot of regional areas to fix power lines. So they are really basically going wherever they need to go to repair or upgrade and replace power poles, as you can see in the picture. And this communication that they're using is life-saving and critical. So we really need to have absolute confidence that they're able to stay connected, because people touching those cables are needing to communicate with people down the line to make sure the power's off and so on, and they need to access things like maps and other data relating to what they're doing and update documentation. So it's really life affecting if they make mistakes here. So this is one use case that we're seeing with satellite that we can address with regional areas, and this can be either in a vehicle or it can be a pull-out case that can be deployed in the location. So we're seeing more and more that satellite services are being deployed. And I just wanted to kind of touch on the different types of satellite before I go any further with how we can use them combined with other technologies. So we've got the low Earth orbit satellites, LEO technology, which is you're probably most familiar with from Starlink. And these are running at about 342 miles above the Earth. They're not geosynchronous, which means they are moving. So there is some delay, and they're in constellations and they move around. They follow each other in constellations around the sky. But the reason that they are more becoming really popular is the fact that they offer really low latency, and they can offer 200-300 meg throughput, which is reasonable speeds when you're in remote areas. And they're reasonably cost effective, generally speaking. So satellite from vendors like Starlink are really becoming a key technology for these regional areas. We then have some other technology called MEO, or medium Earth satellites. These are a bit higher up in the sky and tend to be in that 5,000 to 20,000 kilometer space above the Earth, and they have slightly more latency because they're further away, but you need less of them to cover the same location. And then the third area, which is the area that's been around for 30 odd years or so, is the geostationary satellites, which are at that 22,000 mile space above the Earth. And these satellites are really more the legacy VSATs and things like that, which are out there, and they are what was typically really high cost and very high latency. So 600-700 milliseconds or more latency because of the distance they travel. But the benefit of these is that they stay in a single spot in the sky, because they move at the same pace as the rotation of the Earth. So you don't have to move and switch satellites like you do with the LEO satellites. Your connection stays solid to the same satellite, but you have the lower throughput and you have that higher latency. So just a quick overview there. But what do we see happening in the market in terms of this space? We're seeing that the Starlink and OneWeb LEO technologies are really complementary with 5G. So having the two of them together, ideally active, so you could have a single modem in a router with a Starlink, and then you can use our smart WAN technology, smart WAN selection I talked about earlier, to say which is the best link at any one time. Or I can use SD-WAN and bonding. That's a really key use case for emergency services, where I absolutely must have my connections up and running all the time. If I'm running voice or maybe Teams or a push to talk application over it, I can use the flow duplication technology, and I can then, if I lose one of them, I can hopefully keep connected on the Starlink. I can make the 5G my primary link if I choose, because that's one of the connection options, and therefore that would typically have more throughput, lower latency, and higher speed, but it does, as you go further into the regional and remote areas, you lose that connectivity. So you have to then switch on to a Starlink service. So the key message here is we're seeing a massive interest in this. And obviously there is not really any limitation with satellite in terms of where you can go. So the services that are offered from the satellite providers vary. So there are the basic fixed location types of installations where the satellite is, you pay a lower cost, but you can't move it from, say, one location to another, to the more expensive vehicle type solutions that are allowed to move as the and go on the top of vehicles. They're typically a flat panel, and then they're combined with 5G. So when I'm in 5G coverage, I made preference to use that, and when I'm outside of that coverage, I drop to 4G and then satellite, and then I could bond them all together and take advantage of them all. The other reason that satellite is complementary with 5G is that 5G tends to not having so much problems with weather events or tall buildings or trees and things like that. There are some issues with the LEO technology where, you know, weather events and trees and other buildings, tall buildings, can affect that connectivity. So having the two combined, or 4G even, is where I would suggest that you look at having the combination of two to get that connectivity and stay always connected.
Hey, John, we've lost your screen share, so if you can put it back up. And what I will note is that there were a whole lot of questions that came. I was actually only looking at the one thread. I didn't realize there were a lot of other questions, so we'll get to those at the end. Okay,
I'm going to share again. Let me try that.
We'll reserve 5 minutes. So if we can complete the content in 10, that'll give us 5 minutes for the.
Yeah, I'm nearly done. So yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm trying to reshare again. Let me know if this comes back up. I didn't know that had dropped out. Okay, how's that?
Yep, that's back.
Okay, so nothing much more to say on this other than, yeah, complementary solutions. So coming to the end of what I wanted to cover here, but I did want to just put a mention out here to you about how we manage all this. And if we're remote and we're driving around in regional areas, we may not have people supporting us. We may not have easy access to these equipment that are located in vehicles or even remote locations. So one of the tools that you get with our routers is Net Cloud Manager, or Ericsson Net Cloud Manager. This is our cloud platform. You can do day one deployments with this tool. It will allow you to build all your configuration and push the policies to the router to not just configure, say, the connection manager, where you would set up those features like smart Wan selection and run the tools to pick the best SIM at any one time. We can also do software upgrades of the modem and the router itself remotely. We can use this tool to do things such as work out where the vehicle is, or the router if it's in a regional location. And then we can also use it to build dashboards to see visually where the router is, what tower it's connected to, what band it's on, where it's been. If it's a vehicle, we can do tracking, and then we can also use it to manage devices inside the vehicle as well. So if we're using say if we're in a vehicle and we have a tough pad in a police vehicle and there's a problem with that, or the cameras, for instance, we can use features such as our remote connect feature to be able to remotely troubleshoot and help with that connectivity without having to send somebody out there, which could be, thousands of miles away in terms of the country and the geography. So just wanted you to be aware that this feature is built in. there are other features that this can also give you, such as the ability to run SDKs. So an SDK is a Python-based program which is running on the router. You can run multiples of these to automate certain things, send alerts, change parameters on the router based on different conditions that you can run and push down. Again, the cloud platform allows you to do that. You may want to push down also a Docker container as well. And then finally, artificial intelligence and AI is a hot topic. So we're starting to see the artificial intelligence being introduced into our platform. At this stage, we've got the ANA capability, which allows you to use that to troubleshoot and to get ideas on where the problem may be. It's looking at all the data that we're storing that's coming back and telemetry, and helping you with decisions as to what may be the reason you're experiencing a problem. So again, all of this is built into the subscription. It's cloud hosted, and again, very lightweight on cellular networks, built for cellular. So no issues in terms of it using up all your bandwidth. So final slide really here. I just wanted to call out our portfolio. So just starting on the left hand side, we've got the branch portfolio, where, as I say, they're fixed location products. They need to be in a rack or inside. They are designed to be either a single modem or have the option to have the second modem plugged in. We can combine them with adapters, which is that branch adapter column, which is there's an outdoor adapter there, the 1855, and we've got a 5G indoor version of that, the 1850, and then we have the 4G L950. Now these are bridges or modems. They can plug into a third-party router of your choice, or you can combine them to add a second modem into any of the branch routers that you can see on the branch router slide. Then the final two areas are IoT. So again, these products are designed semi-ruggedized. They're 4G devices generally, because speed is not really required. The S400 has some nice features. It's a brand new product which allows you to have some modular interfaces that you can choose and add into these to give yourself a second, say, Ethernet port or serial port, etc. And these are typically single modem products. The vehicle ones are also in the same category. They're typically single modems, but you can plug in either the MC400 into them to give yourself a second modem with the docks, as I mentioned earlier, or you can use an adapter, but probably in a mobile use case, the adapter wouldn't make sense. They're more focused on the branch routers for fixed locations. And then there's two products at the bottom, the R920 and the R21 series. Those routers are designed to sit across the IoT or the vehicle portfolio. So they have SKUs that you can buy that makes them more relevant for fixed locations, or which is designed typically for IoT, or you can use them in the vehicle scenario. So that's the hardware portfolio. So Mike, I might hand over to you to just answer, to let me know if there's any further questions. Otherwise, I'll let you maybe wrap up with the takeaways.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. The takeaways are pretty simple. All right. I think the message that John really hit home is that Ericsson, the router plus satellite, it's all about combining the two to get the best possible solution. For a truly universal work everywhere solution, one on its own won't do it, especially if you're mobile. And so that's really echoed in sort of points one and two, right? So our actual solutions, as you can see, can pair those, and we'll have always on connectivity. The third point is you actually don't always need a wired connection if you have 5G or 4G. We've got plenty plenty of customers that are just have no fixed line service available, and so that so they run their business on 100% on cellular, and because cellular these days, is pretty good generally. 3G exit, John's mentioned it. It's around the corner. I'm sure we're going to discover plenty of people that haven't sort of paid attention out there in our customer base, but there is an opportunity to go do that. I'm sure lots of people have mentioned that to you guys already. Come talk to Leader. We've been working with Leader more than a year now. They're ramping up their capabilities, and so they're keen to help you out, and also they're keen to bridge us in, and we can help organise trials or anything you'd like to do for that. Now, what I will do, John, is I'll just quickly scan through these questions. So there was one question which was tended to be all around that dual SIM or single dual SIM or bonding. So it sounds to me like it was Chris on the call. So Chris, let us know if we've not answered those ones. But I know you asked about SIP, so we did that. There was a question on CGNAT. How is that handled, John? And CGNAT static IP. How does failover affect the performance of those two features?
Yeah. Okay. So CGNAT is typically a feature of all of the carrier SIMs in Australia, Telstra and Optus and Vodafone. So they're using private dynamic addresses on the SIMs, and then they're NATing them to a public address as they leave the service provider's environment to the internet. So what happens in terms of the failover? Yes, if you're relying on a connection coming in to that SIM through a direct access to that SIM, because you may have a public IP on it, then yes, that's going to get a different IP as it fails over, and it's going to be using the other carrier's IP. So Telstra do have an APN called Telstra Extranet. That is a dynamic public address SIM. But what we would recommend in that scenario is to use SD-WAN and then build a tunnel to the destination. Then you can have fixed connectivity back through that SD-WAN scenario. Or alternatively, if you're trying to connect to devices on the LAN, you can use our cloud platform, which is the NetCloud Manager Remote or LAN Connect feature, which allows you to seamlessly connect into devices on the LAN without knowing what the public address is, or it can be a private CG-NATed address, and that allows you then to manage those devices. But if you must have a fixed address and you want to come inbound into the service, then yeah, you're going to need to probably have some sort of tunneling technology like our SD-WAN to do that. But other than that, it's the cloud can deal with that feature as well. So hopefully that answers the question.
All right. Okay. The next question, which I answered in the chat, but I realised I just answered just for the person who raised it. But the question was around the hardware and licensing model, but specifically if the device is not licensed, does the device still pass traffic like Meraki? So, no license, no traffic passed like Meraki. So I've answered that question, but for the benefit of everyone, after the initial license period expires, the customer has to purchase a renewal to keep all functionality like the same. Expired licenses or devices with expired licenses will still carry traffic, so we don't sort of cut you off. But you do lose the ability to do things like upgrade the device, manage it from NetCloud Manager. You'll have to get in on the console port. You won't have access to a few of the advanced features as well. So especially features where we have back-to-back arrangements with third parties. Those ones, and that's well documented. What I will say is we have well over 90% of renewal rate. We have almost no one who intentionally decides to not renew. So because the renewal cost to renew is actually pretty minimal. So we encourage everyone to renew. Hopefully that answers your question there. The next one, and this is a good one, John. Any plans for us to introduce APs at all? Looking for a Meraki replacement. Do you want to handle that one, John?
Yeah, we are looking at that. Yeah, so that's something we are starting to look at. I don't have any details to share at this stage, but yes, that's something that's on our agenda to look at.
Yep. So yeah, so what we will say is stay tuned. It's more than we're just, we are there's definite activity to do it. Yep. And Chris, I can see you've posted the same question. Yeah, that's right. Exactly what we do is not fully defined. I doubt whether we're going to come up with a complete set of data center and campus switching, to compete with the big guys. But it will be a capability that is very much built around, what solutions we're trying to run with here. So stay tuned for that, and there will be some announcements coming out soon. Now I think that's everything. If anyone's got any questions, any additional questions right now, definitely feel free to raise them in the last few minutes. And if not, I guess I'll hand back to Simon to close. But big thanks from John and I. Thanks for listening to us. And
Yeah, thank you.
we're very open to helping out. We can provide demo gear. What we find is people who take a demo gear and they run a trial, they don't want to give it back. So I guess that's that speaks speaks to our solutions. But happy to help out. So over to you, Simon, to close.
Yeah, thank you. Look, fantastic content. Some great questions as well. Thank you all who participated. Look, we'll be sending out the copy of the slide deck for everyone who attended after this. And look, any questions, please feel free to reach out to your account manager at Leader. And as Mike mentioned, look, demo kits and the part kits, it's something that we can definitely work with you on. It's been very, very popular, and for these kind of scenarios, you definitely have to have a device on hand to actually test and see for yourself all the great features and capabilities that Ericsson can deliver for you. Look, on that note, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Hope you found this session useful, and looking forward to obviously helping out with your Ericsson wireless solutions in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.